Underwriting deals is such a major pain point for people. Most don't want to do it, and the people that are good at it are few and far between. That is why after 6 years of being in the industry and buying over 1,200 apartments, using my best-selling multifamily deal analyzer, I created Real Estate Lab, a full suite acquisition software for multifamily investors. We have built a product that helps investors automate their acquisitions and close more deals, all in a cloud-based platform. You can go to realestatelab.com and sign up today using the promo code TAG2 for 10% off your first 12 months. This is David Tupin. Thanks for listening.
Welcome to the Apartment Gurus, where we dive deep into all things multifamily investing. Our mission is to educate, inspire, and empower real estate investors to reach their highest potential. Each week, host Tate Seamer and co-host Chelsea Garber interview high-level guests from all over the industry who are sure to bring valuable, actionable ideas that will propel your business to the next level. Whether you're just starting out or a seasoned investor, you are in the right place. And now your hosts, the Apartment Gurus, Tate Seamer and Chelsea Garber.
Welcome back, everybody. Another episode of the Apartment Gurus coming at you. And man, this is going to be high energy, high octane stuff with Mr. Sterling White back on the show for this second appearance. Sterling, you came on the show early, very early on in the show's existence, probably 2 years ago now it's been. And I'm really excited to have you back and want to talk to you about current market conditions and what you're up to and all that good stuff.
Yeah, let's do it. I had my caffeine earlier today, and I don't drink much caffeine. So when I do have caffeine, that really does put me over the top. So everyone on here, go ahead and get your popcorn ready, pen and paper, because we're going to drop some bombs for you. Yeah,
wisdom bombs and truth nuggets are what Sterling brings to any presentation. So
that's my goal. Yeah. I don't know everything, everyone, but I'll do the best I can.
Yeah. First of all, listeners, go and follow Sterling on YouTube. He's putting out a lot of great content right now. He brings on premieres that you can sign up to be notified for, which I always do. And I think his perspective on things in the market is tremendous. And his perspective on strategy is amazing. So he's a great YouTube follower amongst other things. So go check him out. So Sterling, how have things been going? Catch us up. And I know you moved to Houston from Indy. Tell us a little bit about why you did that and kind of what you're up to these days.
Yeah. So I would say first and foremost is love everything out here in Houston. The only one knock I would put out here is they say everything is bigger, but my toilet is the same size as the one back home. So I think I just have a defective toilet. That's probably what I need to get it replaced. But I would say the move was made because was in Indianapolis. This was right around when COVID happened. I was in a mental rut and trying to figure out, okay, how to get myself out of that. And there was this one thought that just came to my mind. Hey, why not move? And then that's when all the fear started settling in. No, you can't move. All your family's here. That's the unknown. And when I've had my biggest breakthroughs in life, Tate, is when I've actually leaned into that. So I was looking at Tampa, I was looking at Austin, Texas, and then I was looking at here in Houston. And it was just something that ended up drawing me here, ended up making a leap. And the first month or so, I was thinking, oh, man, why did I do that? That was such a dumb decision. So that remorse. But then as I started experiencing really getting ingrained into the culture here, it was an instant hit from that. That's point. Awesome.
That's awesome. Why Houston? Is it because of the opportunities there in apartments? The city itself. What drew you there?
So there's that. I know Travis Scott is from here, who's an artist. Beyonce is from here too, but no, that's not. That's definitely not. That wasn't that. Those weren't the reasons, but I would say primarily is the here is you get the both worlds when it comes to appreciation as well as yields and cash flow. Yeah. So there's that aspect, and then also the affordability here too, that you're able to get to not only live, but also on the acquisition side, because out in Austin, it's an entirely different market, and trying to get cash flow there just didn't make the most sense. And then from a culture standpoint, it's very diverse out here. So with the mix of all of that in play, that's why I ended up making the decision here.
Yeah. And for listeners, Sterling just brought up something great, which is, most markets in this country are either cash flow markets or they're appreciation markets, right? So places like St. Louis and Detroit and
Indianapolis,
Cleveland, those are all great cash flow markets where everything's still affordable enough that you can buy a property that's going to pay your debt service, pay your bills, pay your investors, and pay you. And that's tremendous, right? We all want that. We all want cash flow. But typically those markets are not growing or appreciating a whole lot in value. And then your appreciation markets are your Austins, your Salt Lake Cities, Dallas,
California.
Yeah, exactly. And those typically are markets that are quite expensive often and have very low cap rates and make it nearly impossible to cash flow a property. But you can do the appreciation play there all day long, where you buy,
which is pretty risky, I would say, but everyone has their own philosophy when it comes to that.
No, I completely agree with you. It's speculative, right? You're buying something that really isn't solvent. You're buying a business that's not solvent based on the speculation that it's going to go up in value. Now, with forced appreciation, that's a little different. You can bank on, like, I can put X amount into this property and it's going to grow by this amount. I can profit by this much. But really, like, what we at Greenlight have gone after and what Sterling's gone after as well is finding kind of the rare case of a market that both cash flows and is appreciating at a nice rate. Houston's a great example of that. Columbus, Ohio, where we own property and are buying property, is another.
Columbus is on fire.
Yeah. And it's still affordable enough that you can cash flow there, and investors, sellers expect for stuff to trade at those prices. We're based in Salt Lake City, and we've done a few small projects here, but we don't even look here anymore. Honestly, we spend, Oklahoma City's our other market, and it's another good example of kind of this hybrid. And I encourage listeners, when you're thinking about different markets to invest in, do the research and try to put yourself at least in a cash flow market, if not a cash flow and appreciating market, because you capture, as Sterling said, the best of both worlds. And that's really important to your investors. Like, they want cash flow and they want appreciation so that they can get a really nice return on the back end. So, and it's funny, I think about these hybrid markets a lot. And now that you say it, of course, Houston's a great example of it, but it hasn't been on our radar much at all. Well, congratulations on the move. Congratulations on finding your niche down there, finding your culture and your people.
The toilet though, tape still, I still got to get that part figured out.
Need a bigger toilet, man. I get it. I understand. So let's just kind of dive right into today's environment, today's market. We're recording this on July 12th, 2022. And as of right now, the last 3 months or so have been quite transitional in terms of pricing, in terms of the debt market, interest rates, leverage, inflation, all those things that we're now looking at a potential recession. People are talking about that. So Sterling, I know because I watched your videos, but if you would share with the listeners what your perspective is on this and what you're doing now.
Yeah. So over the years I've been selling, and I've got a deal that I now have under contract as far as selling that. So that's been the strategy over the years, still in acquisitions mode, but haven't been as aggressive as formerly was, just due to the climate that we're currently in. So that's been the focus right now, is stabilizing that particular property. It was 156 units. Well, it still is 156 units. And there was quite a bit of cash that was going into that, and had an offer. So 2 years into the project, received $1 million more than what our 5-year projection was. So What we're still seeing is that the demand is there, but that was a 1031 buyer. So I've spoken with other investors, and the market is starting to soften a bit, which I believe it will start to shift to more of a buyer's market, but not a crash or anything is my belief that we saw in '08, 2009, 2007, unless a black swan event completely comes out of nowhere. That's where I believe what happened that would cause the crash.
Yeah. Have you put your pencil down completely right now? Are you looking at anything in the way of acquisitions?
I'd say on the side of effort, 5 to 10%. So very minimal at this point on the acquisition side.
Okay. And then, so tell us a little bit about your plan moving forward. Are you going to, what's your, I know you're selling, you're not really underwriting a whole lot in the way of new deals. What's your plan moving forward, to keep growing your wealth and your, and your income and all that good stuff?
Yeah. So investing in other LPs is one. And I know we had a conversation. You had mentioned it on one of the comments about investing in I believe one of your deals, something along those lines. So
I probably did. That sounds like me. Yep.
So looking at opportunities of that and just the cash. So from selling that one deal it's, hey, where do I exactly park that and put it in so I can be able to get yields and then be able to get some upside from it. So that's currently what I've been doing. And then also is I've spent more time understanding or taking on philosophy. So sharpening more of my actual mind and how I view the world and why things are the way they are, and understanding more of macro economics. So that is something I've really actually enjoyed more so.
Mm-hmm. Cool. Do you have thoughts about getting back into being an acquirer, operations guy or operator?
Yes. And this will be as I see the market starts to cool down where it is, because the going direct to owner and taking that approach is, and you've been doing it as well, Tate, it takes a lot. It's quite the undertaking. Yeah. And what I saw and this was when I first initially started that. So I started on the single families, and then I started doing it with multifamily, acquired multiple multifamily properties by doing that. But then I started to notice that just a significant amount of the owners that I would run into, it just wasn't close and penciling out. So the amount of effort and the return on investment on that amount of effort just wasn't there. And I could have kept hitting that wall and keep going forward, but I just decided it's not at this point in time, and just to pivot.
Yeah. So what will you need to see before you pick your pencil back up and start to go to work on the direct to seller approach again?
I'd say cap rates steadily not compressing. And this is a C-class property in Indianapolis that I'm selling in. It's a sub 3.5 is what they're buying it on. I cannot believe how it's 1031 money. So I assume they're just parking it, and then also they're saving, they're not having to pay taxes on that. But still, if someone is willing to pay a 3.5, how does someone compete with that? Such as myself, is you don't. That's how I look at it.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, and for the listeners, Sterling is an absolute direct to seller machine. He's offered coach. Do you still offer any coaching in the direct to seller world?
Yes, I do offer that. Correct.
Okay. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So Sterling is a coach in how to approach sellers, scripts, processes, etc. on how to call sellers directly. I'll just share my personal perspective on this. We were definitely trying hard in the direct to seller world. And at the same time, we had a priority on acquiring larger assets, meaning for us, 60, 80 units or more. And what we found for us was that it like Sterling alluded to, it's hard work, and not that we're afraid of hard work, but that the ROI just wasn't there. The cold caller that we had hired to work this system wasn't really producing much in the way of results. And we noticed that all our good deals were coming from brokers. So we've doubled down on broker relations and on basically nurturing that part of our business. And we've dropped the direct to seller approach completely. And we've gotten into much larger assets, 10, 20, $30 million assets. I would say this to the listeners. If your model right now is to go after, 20, 30, 40, 50 unit type properties, direct to seller is a great way to go, because those owners are often mom and pop type owners that may be in a distressed situation, and you can help them out, and you're going to have a lot more success than you would if you called the $150 million or 150 unit type owner, mainly because that group is going to be more savvy. They're going to understand the business and the market better. They're going to understand that going to a broker and saying, this is something I want to sell. Let's get you going on it. That broker is going to expose the property to the market, and they're going to get a lot of offers, typically if it's priced well. And, ideally what we try to strive for is these really good relationships, long-term relationships with brokers where they're bringing us opportunities. And so that's just my 2 cents on the difference. If you, again, just to reiterate, if you're going for I don't want to say small, but yes, smaller asset class.
Because it's all relative. Because someone that is buying single families, a 10 unit could be massive to them.
Totally. And if you're doing that, direct to seller is something that you really want to consider. So I love that you're delving into philosophy and training your mind, because that just pays off in droves and in ways that you really maybe don't see coming. And you don't know what you don't know in life. Yeah. And so to learn the things that you don't know exposes you to, diversity in thought and philosophy, right? Like life philosophy and everything else. And so, Sterling, you're younger than me. And one of the things, do you mind me asking how old you are for the listeners?
31.
Yeah. So when I met you 4 years ago, you were still in your 20s. You had a lot of success at that point. And in Sterling's background, his childhood was pretty rough. He comes from a family or living situation that
Section 8 housing, grew up on welfare, several times almost lost my life. One time was sitting at the kitchen table, about 5 or 6 years old, eating with my brother right across from me. We go upstairs and a bullet comes right through the patio where we were sitting. And statistically, I actually shouldn't have made it past the age of 18, let alone be in this chair sharing my story with you.
Yeah. And I share that with you listeners to hopefully to inspire you that, number one, you're never too young to get started in this business. And number two, your background doesn't matter. Like if you've got a good head on your shoulders and, have had some good mentorship and understand basic business and maybe even basic investing to a certain degree, like you can jump into this and do very, very well in your 20s. David Tupin is another example of somebody in his early 20s that early mid 20s that really has crushed it.
And also I want to add to that too, is really mindset. And I know it sounds cliche, but it really does go a long way with that, because growing up in that type of environment, I had so many limiting beliefs that were that my mother and the people around me did the best what they could with the information, but it was the information that they had that got them to where they were, which wasn't where I wanted to be. So I had to actually remove a lot of that and then replace it with more empowering beliefs. The example is I thought that rich and wealthy people, in order to get that way, that they had to be unethical to do that. And I'm thinking to myself, how can I become rich and wealthy? I'm an ethical kid. And then also is that, oh man, so many. So that's just one example that comes to mind.
Yeah. And as listeners know, if you've been listening to the show for a little bit, I am huge on mindset. In fact, I think that it's a make it or break it thing. Whether you believe you can or believe you can't, you're right. And that, you just can't get around a limiting belief if you have one in place that, for instance, rich people are unethical, or I'm not smart enough, good enough.
Or you need a lot of money to get started in real estate, or you need to be a certain age. Some people use that. I'm too young to get started.
Or I'm too old to get started even.
Exactly. Interesting how it's just a flip side of that. Yeah. It all comes down to beliefs.
Yeah. So, to me, this personal development piece is massive, whether it's studying philosophy, whether it's, hiring a coach, therapy, any of the transformative personal tools and personal processes that you need to get over your limiting beliefs is key. And even to dig a little deeper, I would say, not to get too psychological or kind of sensitive or whatever, but healing yourself is crucial. Like we all have stuff from our childhood and our past that may be constraining us and limiting us. And if you're constantly working against something like that, you're going to get exhausted and you're not going to be able to have as much success as if you do the hard work. And whether that's, again, like a therapist or a coach or a personal mentor or an educational program, there's lots and lots of ways to skin a cat. And chances are you have a good idea of what you need to heal, wounds and stuff that ultimately is constraining you. And so to me, it's foundational work. It's good work, and it's going to pay off not only in your business, but in your own mindset, in your own head, like, the peace and bliss and things that you come.
And also your perception of the world too, because you could be looking at the world through a foggy lens. But as you mentioned that, as we're growing up, is how much, and I didn't realize this until over the years, I've learned that how we are the way we are as adults because of our childhood. So with that is, if you have some traumas or whatever the case is on that, as you mentioned, seeking therapy to end up getting through some of that. And myself is, I had, as mentioned, growing up in that environment is with, I don't want to go too much into depth into it, but it was just a very tough situation to be in as a kid. And I would say as my growing up, I'll go a little bit into it, is that my mother it was one of those things I always felt as if I was on eggshells with that relationship and constant fear, flight or fight. And then you can imagine that as I age, how that also affects my relationships with people and also working and just people in general. So that's just an example of having to actually go through that through some type of healing. And that not only works in your business, but also outside of that as well.
Yeah. I think we all know intuitively where we're hung up, and we all know intuitively where we might find, whether it's healing or just general resolution to stuff moving forward. I would encourage listeners to dig deep on that stuff, because when we can talk about cap rates and inflation and NOIs and LOIs and all that stuff all day long, but if you're beating your head against a wall inside about, a mother that you were walking on eggshells with, or, in my case, an alcoholic dad, or limiting messages that I got from him or from other places about what I can and can't do. Like if that were something that were still a big part of my mindset and my makeup, I wouldn't be, like Sterling said, I wouldn't be sitting here where I am with, the seven different apartment communities that we own and $50 million and blah, 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 all that stuff. In this case, Sterling and I have both done some hard personal work, and we both continue to. It's an ongoing process, and it's
a rabbit hole, I would say, because something else opens up and it's like, all right, here we go. We got to go down that. And that's what you had mentioned earlier, is doing the work. It's not easy, but the payoff that you get from that is huge.
Yeah. It might be the hardest work you ever do, actually. It is, but it's probably, if that's the case, probably the most valuable work you'll ever do. And it's really, again, not to get too sentimental here, but the best gift that you can give the world, yourself, your relationships, your investors, your business partners, the best thing you can give those people is a fully actualized, healed, integrated version of yourself, because that's the most powerful way that you can show up. And we all want to make a big impact in the world. And, Sterling, you certainly have. I mentioned this, before we got on the air with Sterling, but Sterling was a part of my start in this space. I saw Sterling speak at a multifamily conference, and I want to say that was 2018, if I'm not mistaken. And it might have been 19, but I think it was 18. And Sterling's story was very inspiring to me, and seeing a very poised, inspired and achieved person on stage talk very authentically and vulnerably about his story at such a young age was incredibly inspiring to me. And it made me feel that conference itself as a whole was the first time that I really felt like, okay, maybe I can do this.
Wow.
And so Sterling, you were a big part of that, man. I just want to acknowledge you for that.
I appreciate that. That really goes a long way. It's great to hear that, Tate.
Yeah, you bet. Over the last couple of years, you've done a lot of different things. You've done the coaching. You've obviously invested. You bought places. You're now selling places. I'm just curious, like, what do you feel like your sweet spot is? Like your superpower? Where do you feel like you really like? Man, Sterling is just on fire in this part of my life.
I would say two things. More so. First and foremost is just taking action, committing first, and figuring the rest out later. So, which has been one of those things that is a double-edged sword. Because let's say there's a wall in front of me, I can be the Juggernaut from, I think it's Marvel or X-Men, and I'll figure out a way to run through that wall by figuring things out. But oftentimes that causes me to leave a mess behind, where also I could have took a step back and thought a little bit more, okay, maybe I can build a ladder, maybe I can go around it. But I would say the action taking has really helped me, because that has allowed me to overcome a lot of things and just move with speed. So I would say that's one thing. It's just, I see a problem, I'm at A, I want to get to Z. I have the ability to figure out a way to bridge that gap. So that's the first. And then secondly is that one of the things I've recently over the years adopted more of is just being a thinker, and not only thinking about the macros when it comes to the real estate and business in itself, it's human nature. And even bigger picture in that, like, why are we here? But more so on human nature is that if you understand why humans do what they do in certain scenarios, then that will allow you to be able to get ahead of the curve as well. Because a lot of what humans do is we go in cycles. So that's also what affects markets too. So if you can understand the sentiment of what's going on there, let's say in the media, they may start to scare people. And then in that case, okay, this is where people are starting to go. I'm going to make a decision because I see opportunity.
Yeah. That's tremendous. Your first point about taking action is key. And I'm trying to remember who talked about, I think it was Warren Buffett. I could be wrong about that, but a big investor talks about how he does, I think it's a 70-30 rule. He doesn't make a decision without knowing at least 30% of what he needs to know about the deal. And let me see if I got this right. Sorry, he doesn't make a decision without knowing 30% of what he needs to know. And he doesn't make a decision without not knowing about 70% of what he needs to know. In other words, you need to be able to act efficiently, sometimes quickly, but always with decision, with decisiveness, and in this space. So if you're an overanalyzer and you're somebody that needs to have all the facts and all the data before you make a decision, this is probably not a good space for you. At the same time, if you're somebody that's kind of a gambler and you're just like sight unseen, let's go buy this place, this is also probably not a good place for you. But if you're willing to be in the middle and make an educated decision without all of the data, this is a good place for you. A lot of people call it the ready, fire, aim approach, where you're looking and you're watching for an opportunity. One comes up, you get some of the information you need, maybe some of the key points, and you pull the trigger and you figure out the rest after you pull the trigger. Right. Yeah.
And what I wanted to mention too is that you mentioned on the two extremes is overanalyzer, and then the person that's more of a gambler or action taker is that would be a perfect match made in heaven, and which is one of the things that helped me and my partnership. I wouldn't say we were too much on the extremes, but I was more of, hey, this makes sense. We don't need to have all the information, but I had a partner that was more of a analytical, in spreadsheets, looking at the data, analyzing, and then that's what allowed that partnership to flourish.
Yeah. So you were the ready, fire, aim guy, and you had kind of a check on that with your partner. Yeah. And I think those are valuable partnerships, right? Like you don't want two ready, fire, aim guys on the same team necessarily.
I don't know how that would work out. I'm sure there are partnerships that way, but if you look at it from, I wouldn't say the probability of it working out, it could be very slim.
Yeah, for sure. Cool. So yeah, in the last few years since we met, I'm sure you know, with your educational piece and your investor piece and, you know, speaking, YouTube, et cetera, you've met a lot of people in this space. And I'm curious just to ask you, you know, when you see somebody that I guess like me, but, you know, that starts from scratch and really has never done a deal and then basically grows and, becomes good at the business and grows their balance sheet, you know, to a nice level. What are some of the common themes or common characteristics that you see in those type people?
I'd say there's, 3 to 4 that come to mind initially is mindset. That's huge. I can instantly, many of the times, tell whether or not someone can succeed based upon the words and phrases that they use, such as, I don't know if I could do that, versus someone, hey, I'll go ahead. I'll figure out a way to do that. So I would say mindset. Second is who they have in their surrounding circle is a good indication of who they are and also their thoughts too. And that could be mentor, that could be coaching, that could be some type of mastermind group, whatever the case it is. So the group around them. And then, gosh, what was going to be the third? Yes, ability to take action and not know that they have to have all the answers. And as you mentioned, that rule earlier is that minimally or maximally is having about 30% and being able to, okay, this is what I need to know. I'll be able to take action and move forward on this deal, and I'll figure everything else out later, which of course you still want to protect your downside in that case. But yeah, you need to know 30% of this, but you don't need to know 100% in order to move forward.
Yeah. That's good stuff. And I would echo all of that. I would add tenacity to that, just an ability to really get after it and not take no for an answer when it comes to getting results in your space. And to me, that's a quality that some people have and some people don't. Some people learn. And I don't know if it's something you're born with. So I think some people are, but you know, my friend Bo Beery was on the podcast recently, talked about that soccer player that you see. You get a field full of kids, let's say 12-year-old kids that are playing soccer. And, you know, there's some that aren't real great. There's some that are good. And then there's the one kid on the field that is slide tackling, you know, getting scraped elbows, is winning balls, is just, you know, passionate and ultimately having the time of his life because he's out there getting after it. And I like to think of myself as embodying some of those characteristics. And I don't say that to brag. I just say that, you know, because I love it. I love what we do. I love the commercial multifamily space. And I love the opportunities there. And I really, really love the opportunity to talk to people like Sterling through the podcast and other avenues, because that's where you get inspired. That's where you learn. That's where you see other people's perspectives. And, you know, and Sterling, you've just really put yourself out there in the thought leadership world over and over and over again. And, you know, for that, I know there's a lot of people that are grateful to you, that have learned from you. And like I said, I'm certainly one of those. So that's awesome. So,
and one thing I do want to add to your tenacity part too is rejection, which is Yeah, if you're someone who's afraid of rejection, I would say in general, is you may want to leave the planet because rejection is going to be everywhere. But especially when it comes to this industry, you're going to get tons of no's, especially on the acquisition when going direct to owner is quite a bit of rejection on that. But as long as you're able to, one, not take it personally, which in the book, the 4 agreements, that's actually one of the agreements is to not take things personally and just keep pushing through. And this is also another thing too, is that having a large enough why to be able to push you through that. I came from Section 8 housing welfare. I never want to go back to that. Also, I want to be an ideal in the message for kids who are currently in that environment. Hey, I know this is the common path that's actually pushed onto you. You don't have to take that path. Here's the path that I took, and this is the blueprint that's there.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well said. Can't say it better than that myself. Well, we're kind of running up against time here. It's flown by. I just want to ask you, like, for the listeners, the listener that is still working on getting their first deal done, or maybe has done a few deals and is looking to level up. Any final words of wisdom for that type person?
I'd say as long as you don't give up, there's no way that you could fail. I wish I could tell. Well, I wouldn't even, because I was still. But that's what I would tell to someone who may be feeling, especially in today's market, that, hey, these deals aren't penciling out. They're not able to make sense. And what am I going to do? I'm not able to get that first deal. Everyone else is buying deals. So that's the second thing, is I wouldn't get bogged too down in social media and seeing what others are going to do, because that's going to reflect your mindset and could put you down, or you may want to start to take shortcuts in order to get to that because you see what others are experiencing. So that's 2 things, is one, not get caught up in the social media on that side. And then secondly, I forgot what I mentioned, patience. Yeah. And yes, it's easier said than done. But that's what I would say is when it comes to real estate, it's a long-term play. Absolutely. And I know guys who have been in the industry decades more than I have, and they've mentioned there's been times where they've gone years without buying deals, but then there's times where they really just heavily go in acquisitions mode. So I hear that from them, and it's okay. Thank you so much for those insights.
Yeah, that's tremendous stuff. Well, lots of truth nuggets here and wisdom bombs. You're always good for them, Sterling, and it's been great to have you back on the show. If listeners want to reach out to you, what's the best way for them to contact you and learn more about you?
Yeah. So one is sterlingwhiteofficial.com. That is sterlingwhiteofficial.com. And then also, if you're on Instagram, it's the same thing, Sterling White Official. Just go ahead and slide into the DM with any questions that you may have here at any point in time to help you along your journey.
Great. And I would also add, subscribe on YouTube to Sterling White's channel. Great stuff there. He's always entertaining. He always has a lot of funny things to say, but edutainment is what I like to call it. Not only the education, but entertainment as well. Yeah, that's good. That's great. So, well, sir, I really appreciate you, and thank you for everything that you've done for me and my team. And thanks again for being on the show. I really appreciate it.
Anytime, Tate. Appreciate you and everyone who's on here as well. Keep being awesome and making things happen.
There you go. Can't say it better myself. Thank you, listeners, for listening to another episode of the Apartment Gurus.
Yes, I did see the name change.
We changed the name. The one and only Chelsea Garber joins me on just about every other episode now, where she and I deep dive into stuff that we're up to, and I still host the interview episodes. So Apartment Gurus now, and we're grateful to have you as a listener. So thanks again, everybody, and we'll catch you on the next one. Take care.
Thanks for listening to the Apartment Gurus with Tate Seymour. Tate and Chelsea are grateful to have you as a loyal listener. If you like what you've heard, please subscribe, rate, and review, and share with friends on your Apple Podcasts, Google Play, Spotify, or any other podcast platform. Also, check out Tate's YouTube channel for videos of many of these episodes and more. Until next time, take massive action steps and rock on.